Hello and welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Gabriel the Bibi Capaldi and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please do check down below that you are subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and helps us pop up on your feed a bit more often. Inside their educational ship, Professor Rodak watched with interest as his students interacted with their datapads and laughed among themselves, casually leaning against their seats as if the planet they had landed on was just another boring but historically significant place in the galaxy. Seeing their smiles and carefree chatter, Rodak could almost taste the sweetness of their reactions. So naive now, so unprepared for the moment they would finally understand why Earth was known as a Deathworld. Rodak's bright yellow eyes blinked methodically as he walked the narrow gaps among the seats of their mobile classroom, observing the young ones. The emerald-green plumage covering most of his body took on a vivid hue under the ship's lighting, transitioning to vibrant yellow feathers around his neck and chest in an elegant gradient. Despite being past his prime, his feathers retained their luster and his posture remained impeccable. Back straight, wings neatly folded against his sides, his sharp, curved beak, adorned with two perfectly round nostrils near the base, glistened as if freshly polished. Every time he visited Earth, the humans would inevitably call him Professor Owl, despite his species having evolved on a planet more than 500 light-years away from Earth's native avians. The thought made his crest feathers drop involuntarily. Perhaps this time he would be spared the embarrassment. He pushed the thought aside as he carefully navigated the narrow aisle between the seats, regarding the group of students and wondering about their reaction to Earth, not as a distant concept, but as the raw reality of seeing it with their own eyes. His class consisted of 12 students from 8 different species, each one a promising young scholar in xenobiology and comparative planetary sciences. They had no idea what awaited them. None of them had ever experienced a Deathworld firsthand, let alone a Class 13. He would change that today. Rodak's head rotated nearly 180 degrees in a smooth motion that always made his mammalian students wince. His piercing gaze methodically checked each student, ensuring they were properly secured with safety harnesses. The ship's safety protocols were excellent, but protocol was just protocol. "Lamaro, please tighten your restraints," he chirped to a furry Godar in the third row who had left his harness loose to accommodate his thick mane. "Strella, your secondary strap needs to be secured around your lower appendage." His voice was authoritative as he addressed a soft-skinned student whose 6 tentacles were arranged haphazardly around her safety harness. Only after he was absolutely certain that every one of them was properly secured did he begin the day's lesson. Without warning, he tapped a sequence onto his wrist device. The ship's gravity dampening system shut down instantly. Chaos erupted immediately. Lamaro's eyes widened in shock as the protein bar he'd been munching on slipped from his grip and fell to the floor with a thud that seemed impossibly loud. The young Godar tried to reach for it, but his arm felt like it was made of neutron star material. "By the cold void!" he gasped, his voice strained. Aethera, a female Sotharian whose transparent body normally moved with grace, stared in horror at her limbs. The crystalline structures that composed her form seemed to drag downward, the delicate tendrils that normally floated around her head now hanging limply against her shoulders. "Professor," she called out, "something is wrong with my body." Most distressed of all was his ear, the tallest student in the class. The Stridene's pink skin had taken on a deeper hue, and his long, elegant limbs trembled visibly under the strain. His chest heaved as he struggled to draw adequate breath, his respiratory sacs clearly laboring. "Remain calm," Professor Rodak announced, his own body compensating for the increased gravity with apparent ease, though even he felt the familiar strain in his hollow bones. What you are experiencing is merely the natural gravitational pull of planet Earth. without the assistance of our ship's dampening field. He strode to the front of the students, each step deliberately slow, to conceal his own discomfort. The teaching console lit up as he tapped it with a talon. Today's field study concerns a planet that, I must admit, has no particular historical significance to the great galactic community, he began, projecting an image of the blue-green world in a screen behind him. No spatial wars were fought here. It was not the birthplace of any revolutionary scientific theory that changed our understanding of the universe. Even first contact with Earth's dominant species was, by galactic standards, unremarkable and proceeded according to protocol. He paused, allowing his words to sink in as his students continued to struggle with the gravity. And yet, he continued, the very fact that life exists on such an extreme planet is a miracle, and the knowledge that intelligent life evolved here is even more astounding. Earth represents an anomaly, a statistical improbability that defies conventional understanding of habitability parameters. But his carefully prepared lecture was falling on deaf ears. The students were too preoccupied with their sudden weight to pay attention to evolutionary anomalies. "Professor," wheezed Trellix, a strong, gray-skinned student, "is something malfunctioning? I can barely move." "Nothing is malfunctioning," Rodak replied calmly. "This is part of today's lesson." "But we're being crushed," complained Vorno, a red-scaled Harut. "How much more than galactic standard is this?" asked Lamaro, the Godar, who was making valiant if futile attempts to sit upright. Professor Rodak didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched them struggle, allowing them to fully experience the reality of Earth's gravity. He moved around the classroom, observing their reactions with a certain degree of detachment, and, of course, a tiny bit of satisfaction. After long moments of this, he finally replied, "Earth exists at approximately 2.5 times galactic standard gravity. What you're experiencing is perfectly normal for this planet." A collective groan echoed through the classroom. "But I assure you," he continued, "I have accounted for each of your physiologies in planning this excursion. You are all capable of withstanding this gravity for the duration of our visit." "Is that why Chronix isn't here?" asked Aethera, referring to their gelatinous classmate who had remained on the educational vessel orbiting Earth and would be returning home in a tiny ship. "Indeed," Rodak confirmed. "Poor Chronix's massive gelatinous body would have been instantly compressed under Earth's gravitational pull. His absence is a necessary precaution." "If anything, Chronix is the lucky one," muttered Hizir, still struggling to breathe properly. "Professor, can you turn the dampeners back on?" pleaded Strella. "No," Rodak said firmly. "You need to acclimate to Earth's gravity. This is merely one small and less significant aspect of what makes Earth a Deathworld. We still have a full day ahead to explore the full extent of the only Class 13 Deathworld the Galactic Council has ever encountered." For the next 10 minutes, the classroom devolved into a chorus of complaints and groans. The students discussed nothing but the oppressive gravity, comparing their discomforts and speculating about how the native species could possibly function in such conditions. "Do humans have internal gravity dampeners?" wondered Trellix. "Maybe they're made out of super dense materials," suggested Vorno.
"Or maybe they evolved some biological mechanism to counter the effects,"
offered Aethera, the most scientifically minded in the group. Professor Rodak let them talk, observing and feeling mild amusement at their reactions. Their theories, while creative, showed how little they truly understood about adaptation and evolution in extreme environments. This was exactly why field studies were invaluable. "I believe you should be adequately adjusted by now," he finally announced after precisely 9 minutes and 47 seconds had passed. "You should be ready to walk." His announcement was met with looks of disbelief. "Walk?" echoed Lamaro. "In this?" "Yes, walk," Rodak confirmed. "But rest assured, you won't be required to take more than a few steps on Earth's surface." With considerable effort and no small amount of grumbling, the students unstrapped themselves from their seats and attempted to stand. Some, like Hizir and Lamaro, managed to achieve a hunched position. Others, like Trellix and Strella, could barely lift themselves from the floor. "Follow me outside," Rodak instructed, leading the way toward the ship's rear exit, the egress portal, as it was officially designated in ship schematics. Even Rodak, despite his regular visits to Earth, was beginning to feel the effects of the gravity more profoundly than he cared to admit. His lightweight avian frame was not designed for such conditions, but for the sake of preserving his authority and the educational value of the experience, he masked his discomfort, maintaining his dignified bearing as he approached the exit controls. The metal turned liquid and morphed into a ramp, revealing the alien landscape beyond. Rodak stepped out first, feeling the dry air against his feathers. Earth's sun was just beginning to rise on the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert terrain they had landed in. The cold night air still clung to the landscape, creating a chill that penetrated even through his insulating plumage. One by one his students followed him outside, each movement a struggle against not only gravity, but now the unfamiliar climate as well. "It's freezing!" complained Vorno, whose silicon body was particularly sensitive to temperature fluctuations.
"And yet so dry,"
observed Aethera, whose transparent form was already showing signs of dehydration, the fluid within her crystalline structures receding slightly. "The gravity and the cold together are unbearable," groaned Lamaro, his thick fur providing some protection against the chill, but adding to his gravitational burden. Professor Rodak listened to their complaints with practiced patience. "This is merely the beginning of our day," he informed them. "There is something specific we must observe in this location, but it will take a few hours to manifest fully." A collective groan rose from the group. "In the meantime," he continued, "I strongly recommend you spend these hours studying the Deathworld resources I have prepared for you. You may wait inside the ship if you prefer." The students didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled back into the ship with as much haste as the crushing gravity would allow, practically fighting to be the first to return. Once everyone was back inside, Rodak addressed the ship's educational interface. "Please distribute the Earth study materials to all student terminals." "Access allowed," the ship's voice confirmed. For the next 3 hours, the students immersed themselves in the study materials, detailed analyses of Earth's extreme conditions, statistical comparisons to other known worlds, and case studies of the remarkable resilient indigenous species. Professor Rodak moved among them, answering questions and providing additional context where needed. As the 3-hour mark approached, Rodak checked the external sensors and nodded with satisfaction. "It's time," he announced. "Please, follow me outside once more." The students, slightly more accustomed to the gravity after their study period, followed him with marginally less difficulty than before. As they emerged from the ship, they found themselves facing the same desert landscape, but with one dramatic difference. The temperature had risen from near freezing to scorching heat. What had been a cold, dark desert was now a blazing furnace. The sun, higher in the sky, beat down mercilessly on the sand, creating heat waves that distorted the distant horizon. "By the old gods!" exclaimed his ear, immediately beginning to perspire through his pink skin. "What happened?" "This," Professor Rodak explained, his own body temperature regulation struggling to keep pace with the sudden change, "is one of the primary reasons Earth is classified as a death world. The temperature variation in many places can exceed 50 degrees within hours."
50?
whispered Aethera, her transparent form already beginning to evaporate at the edges.
"Yes," Rodak replied. "Here, such extremes are commonplace. Many regions experience both freezing cold and blistering heat within a single planetary rotation."
"But how does anything survive?"
asked Lamaro, panting heavily as his thick fur trapped the heat against his body.
"Adaptation," Rodak answered simply. "Earth's life forms have evolved remarkable mechanisms to survive these conditions. Some enter dormant states during extreme periods. Others have developed specialized organs for temperature regulation. Still, others migrate between regions to avoid the worst extremes."
"And the humans?"
asked Vorno.
"Humans have developed both biological adaptations and technological solutions," Rodak explained. "Their bodies can sweat to cool themselves, a method that's unique among all species we've ever found. They've also created climate-controlled habitats and protective clothing."
After only a few minutes under the scorching sun, the students were begging to return to the ship.
"Very well,"
Rodak conceded, leading them back inside.
"We still have 2 more locations to visit today. Given your exemplary behavior and engagement with the study materials, I will permit the use of gravity dampeners during our transit to give your bodies some rest."
The relief on their faces was crystal clear.
"Ship,"
Rodak addressed the main AI,
"set course for location Beta. Activate gravity dampeners during transit only."
"Course set for Amazon Basin. Gravity dampeners activated," the ship confirmed. "Estimated arrival time, 9 minutes." As the ship lifted off, the students collectively sighed with relief as the crushing weight lifted from their bodies. Their relief, however, was tempered by nervous anticipation. If Earth's gravity and climate variations were merely the beginning, what horrors awaited them at the next location?
"Professor,"
ventured Lamaro,
"what could possibly be worse than what we've already experienced?"
Rodak's beak clicked in what the students had come to recognize as his equivalent of a smile.
"You'll see soon enough."
The 17-minute journey passed quickly, filled with speculative discussions among the students about what new terrors Earth might present. Their anxiety only grew when the ship announced their arrival and the gravity dampeners began to power down.
"Remember,"
Rodak cautioned as they prepared to disembark,
"observe everything carefully. What you experience today will form the basis of your final assessment."
The egress portal opened to reveal a startlingly different landscape. Gone was the barren desert, replaced by dense, vibrant greenery. Massive trees reached skyward, their canopies forming a verdant ceiling overhead. The air was completely filled with moisture, a full contrast to the desert's aridity. Nearby, a river flowed lazily, its surface occasionally broken by little waves. The students exited the ship with more confidence than before, having slightly adapted to the gravity. They looked around with genuine wonder, several of them taking readings on their data devices.
This looks like a thriving garden world,"
said Aethera, her transparent form refracting the dappled sunlight into miniature rainbows.
"The life form readings are off the scale,"
added Vorno, studying his scanner.
"There are more species in this small area than on entire planets I've studied."
"And the temperature is quite pleasant," noted his ear, his pink skin no longer flushed with heat stress.
"Perhaps Earth isn't so bad after all,"
suggested Lamaro,
his earlier complaints forgotten as he marveled at a colorful flying creature that had landed momentarily on a nearby branch before darting away. Professor Rodak said nothing. He simply waited, his yellow eyes tracking the seconds on his internal chronometer. 3, 2, 1.
My skin is itching,
complained Trellick suddenly, slapping at his gas bladder appendages. Something bit me, exclaimed Strella, examining a tiny red mark on one of her tentacles.
There's something on my arm,
shouted Lamaro, staring in horror at a small black dot that appeared to be burrowing into his fur. It's sucking my blood, said Aethera, her normally calm demeanor shattered as she observed a tiny creature through her transparent skin, drawing fluid from her internal circulatory system. Within seconds, all 12 students were frantically swatting at themselves, discovering more and more tiny assailants with each passing moment. Without waiting for Rodak's permission, they charged back into the ship, abandoning all scientific decorum in their panic. Rodak followed at a more measured pace, counting under his breath. By the time he entered the ship and the wall sealed behind him, his students were in various states of distress, examining bites and stings all over their bodies.
What was that?
demanded Lamaro, his fur standing on end. Professor, explain immediately, insisted Aethera, inspecting a small puncture in her transparent structure where fluid was leaking. Rodak activated the ship's display, bringing up an enhanced image of a tiny 6-legged creature with a proboscis and delicate wings. This, he announced, is what Earth natives call a mosquito. It is a hematophagous insect, a blood feeder. There are over 3,500 species of mosquitoes on Earth, and they are found in nearly every habitat except the polar regions and extreme altitudes.
They feed on blood?
Gasped Hizir, horrified. Indeed, Rodak confirmed. The females require blood proteins to produce eggs. They locate their victims through carbon dioxide detection, body odor, and heat signatures. Once landed, they insert their proboscis through the skin and inject anticoagulant saliva to prevent clotting while they feed.
That's barbaric,
exclaimed Vorno. It gets worse, Rodak continued, changing the display to show microscopic organisms. Many species of mosquitoes are vectors for dangerous pathogens. Throughout Earth's history, these tiny insects have transmitted diseases that have killed billions of sentient beings. Malaria, dengue fever, yellow fever, Zika virus, all spread by these minuscule creatures. The students stared at him in stunned silence. However, Rodak added, noting the growing panic, you need not worry about disease transmission during our brief visit. The nanomedicine you were all administered before our journey will neutralize any Earth pathogens before they can cause harm. A collective sigh of relief swept through the group. So, with the right technology, the forest isn't so bad? Ventured Strella cautiously. Rodak's head rotated slowly toward her, his yellow eyes unblinking. The mosquitoes are merely the beginning. Over the next several minutes, he methodically described the rainforest's array of dangers, venomous snakes that could deliver enough toxin to kill dozens of humans with a single bite, massive constrictors capable of crushing prey larger than themselves, predatory caimans lurking beneath the water's surface, spiders whose venom could cause tissue necrosis or neurological collapse, frogs whose skin secretions could paralyze a being merely by touch. He saved his favorite for last. And then, he said, bringing up an image of an unremarkable-looking fish, there is the electric eel. This aquatic predator generates electrical discharges, enough to stun its prey, ward off predators, or even kill a small animal under the right circumstances. A biological organism that generates electricity?" whispered Aethera in disbelief. That is hard to believe." "Not on Earth," Rodak replied. "Such adaptations are precisely what one would expect to evolve on a Class 13 Deathworld." The students were silent now, their earlier confidence shattered. Earth was beginning to make sense to them, not as a planet, but as a threat. "Ship," Rodak commanded, "prepare for departure to another location." "Course, plotting," the ship responded. "Destination?" "I believe we'll skip Australia this time," Rodak decided, noting the already shell-shocked expressions of his students. "Set course for an urban human settlement instead. Florida will suffice." "Course set for Florida," the ship confirmed. "Gravity dampeners activated for transit. Estimated arrival time, 7 minutes." As the ship powered on and lifted off, the students exchanged nervous glances. They had experienced Earth's crushing gravity, its extreme temperature variations, and its deadly microfauna. What new horrors awaited them in a human city? Professor Rodak observed their subdued demeanor with great satisfaction. They were beginning to understand. By day's end, they would truly comprehend why Earth was designated the galaxy's only Class 13 Deathworld, and why its dominant species, humanity, was at the same time feared and respected throughout galactic society. The ship ascended through the atmosphere, briefly giving the students a view of the vast blue oceans that covered most of the planet's surface. Even the seemingly peaceful waters, Rodak knew, concealed countless dangers, from microscopic toxin-producing algae to massive predators with multiple rows of teeth. But those lessons would wait for another day. For now, they were headed to witness humanity's most impressive adaptation to their lethal homeworld, civilization. As the ship banked toward the northern continent, Rodak began preparing his lecture on urban dangers, air pollution, noise-induced hearing damage, vehicle accidents, artificial food additives, electromagnetic radiation, and the most dangerous element of all, humans themselves. The ship's descent toward Florida's coastline was gradual and controlled. Unlike their previous landings, Professor Rodak instructed the vessel to maintain altitude several hundred meters above the surface. "We will not be landing this time," he announced to the surprised students. "But, Professor," Lamaro questioned, his fur still bristling from their rainforest encounter, "how will we experience the human settlement if we remain airborne?" Rodak's feathers ruffled through all his body as he adjusted his stance to compensate for the ship's subtle movements. The truth was, he had no intention of subjecting himself to being called Professor Owl yet again by the humans below. His previous visit to Earth's urban centers had always resulted in the same tiresome comments and pointing fingers. This time, observation from a distance would suffice. "Our ship's sensory array is more than capable of providing us with the data we need, and the ship's AI can compile everything quickly," he explained instead. "Besides, the gravity would be particularly taxing in a human urban environment where you might need to move quickly, and I'm sure none of you would like the chaos of human urban areas." The students, still traumatized by their previous experiences, seemed relieved at the news. None of them appeared eager to face another of Earth's horrifying features up close. "Ship," Rodak commanded, "establish contact with local human traffic control and request permission to hover for educational observation. Initiating communication with Earth authorities," the ship responded. "Transmitting educational research credentials and diplomatic clearance." While they waited, the students crowded around the observation ports, their earlier exhaustion temporarily forgotten as they gazed down at the sprawling human settlement below. The coastline stretched like a pale border against the azure waters, dotted with structures of various sizes and configurations. "They build so close to the water," observed Aethera, her transparent form still showing signs of stress from the previous encounters. "Isn't that dangerous?" "Extremely," confirmed Rodak. "Many of their settlements are constructed in areas prone to flooding, storm surges, and extreme weather patterns, yet they persist." "Permission granted," announced the ship. "Local authorities have approved our observation period for 6 standard hours. Recording protocols activated." "Excellent," said Rodak. "Begin capturing human interactions. Focus on behavioral patterns, social dynamics, and conflict resolution." "What specifically interactions, Professor?" asked Hizir, his tall form hunched slightly as if still feeling the phantom weight of Earth's gravity.
"And why conflict resolution?"
added Vorno, his red scales glistening under the ship's lights. Rodak's beak clicked shut before opening again in what his students recognized as his version of a cryptic smile. "You'll understand shortly." The main display activated, showing multiple feeds from the ship's external sensors. The students watched, fascinated, as the images showed humans engaging in various activities across the sprawling coastal area. Some lounged on sandy beaches, others moved in metallic vehicles along paved pathways, while still others navigated small watercraft across the bays and inlets. While the students observed the general feeds, Rodak discreetly manipulated his personal console, filtering through the massive amount of data the ship was collecting. He was searching for something specific, something that would drive his final lesson home. "Professor, what exactly are we looking for?" Strella inquired, her tentacles coiling anxiously. "Patience," Rodak replied without looking up. "Our lesson is about to become clear." After several minutes of searching, he found exactly what he needed. With a swift motion of his talon, he transferred the feed to the main display, replacing the benign scenes of human recreation. The new image caused a collective gasp among the students. In murky water, a human and a large reptilian creature were locked in what appeared to be mortal combat. The human, a male specimen with minimal protective covering, had somehow positioned himself behind the massive reptile, maintaining a grip on its powerful jaws while the creature thrashed violently in the water. Is that one of the predators you mentioned from the rainforest?" whispered Aethera, her crystalline form vibrating with shock. "Similar, but distinct," Rodak explained. "This is what humans call an alligator, one of the many apex predators that share their living spaces. This particular species can grow up to 4 meters in length, possesses immense bite force, and has survived relatively unchanged for millions of years."
"But why is the human fighting it?"
asked Lamaro, his fur standing on end.
"Don't they have weapons or technology to deal with such threats?"
"They do," confirmed Rodak. "Advanced weapons, barriers, repellents, all manner of solutions for avoiding such confrontations."
"Then this human must be insane!"
exclaimed Hizir. Rodak's head rotated toward his students, his yellow eyes gleaming. "This brings us to perhaps the most dangerous aspect of Earth, the unpredictability of its dominant species." He tapped his console again, bringing up a different feed. This one showed a human deliberately inserting their upper limbs into a small opening in a wooden structure, from which emerged several small flying insects. "The human is collecting the venom of what they call bees, insects whose sting causes pain and, in some cases, fatal allergic reactions." Another tap, another scene. a human leaping from an extraordinary height, attached to nothing but a thin elastic cord. "Recreational falling," explained Rodak. "They call it bungee jumping." Yet another scene. Humans deliberately entering the ocean where large predatory fish were known to feed. "Recreational swimming in shark-infested waters." With each new scene, the students' expression shifted from confusion to horror to disbelief. "The phenomenon you're witnessing," Rodak continued, "is particularly pronounced in this region. Humans themselves have a term for it, a Florida man, denoting behaviors so irrational and dangerous that they defy conventional explanation."
But why?
Asked Vorno, his scales now a pale shade of their usual vibrant red.
Why would an intelligent species deliberately engage with the dangers of their world instead of avoiding them?
"That," said Rodak, his voice taking on a lecturing tone, "is the true enigma of humanity. Having evolved on a Class 13 Deathworld, they have developed not only the physical resilience to survive its myriad threats, but also a psychological relationship with danger that most galactic species find incomprehensible." He brought up a final scene, a human approaching what appeared to be a small but clearly venomous serpent, using nothing but a stick to maneuver it. In human culture, particularly among certain subgroups, deliberate risk-taking is not merely tolerated, but celebrated. They have terms for it: courage, thrill-seeking, adventure. Some humans build their entire identities around confronting the very dangers that shaped their evolution. "Is this normal?" asked Aethera hesitantly. "For all humans?" "No," Rodak admitted, "and that is perhaps the most dangerous aspect of all. When interacting with humans, one never knows whether one is dealing with a rational being who will avoid unnecessary risk, nor a biological anomaly that might, without warning, engage in behaviors that most species would consider suicidal." "That's terrifying," whispered Strella. "Indeed," Rodak agreed. "It helps explain why, despite their technological limitations, humans were granted multiple seats on the Galactic Council upon first contact. Many elder species argued against it, but those who understood Earth's true nature recognized that any species that could survive on a Class 13 Deathworld possessed qualities that would be unwise to dismiss." The students fell silent, absorbing this final revelation. For several minutes they simply watched the various feeds of human activity, now seeing them through new eyes, not as mere curiosities, but as evidence of an evolutionary path so divergent from their own that it defied easy comprehension. Finally, Rodak closed the displays and turned to face his class. "Now, can anyone tell me why Earth is classified as a death world?" One by one the students spoke, their earlier levity completely gone. "The crushing gravity?" said Hizir, his respiratory sacs still laboring slightly.
"The extreme temperature variations,"
added Vorno. "The overwhelming biodiversity of predators and parasites?" said Aethera.
"The unpredictability of its dominant species," said Lamaro. "Or should I say, crazy behaviors."
Rodak nodded, his crest feathers rising in approval. "Excellent. You've learned today what no textbook could adequately convey. Earth is not merely a planet with challenging conditions. It is an evolutionary crucible that has produced life forms uniquely adapted to conditions that would kill most galactic species within minutes." He paused, his head tilting slightly. "Unless anyone feels they would benefit from a first-hand visit to Australia, where even the plant life can cause excruciating pain." I believe our educational objectives have been met.
The students hurriedly assured him that no such visit was necessary. Their understanding of Earth's Deathworld status was now thoroughly cemented in their minds.
"Ship," Rodak commanded, "terminate observation protocols and set course for the Council Administrative Planet. Standard gravity and environmental settings."
"Course set," confirmed the ship. "Estimated arrival, 14 hours, 22 minutes." As the ship ascended through Earth's atmosphere, the students retreated to their rest chambers, each lost in their own thoughts about the planet they were leaving behind. Only Rodak remained in the observation deck, watching the blue-green world shrink to a distant point. He felt the familiar satisfaction of a lesson well taught. These students would never again view Earth as just another entry in a planetary database. They would understand, on a visceral level, why the rest of the galaxy both feared and respected the strange, resilient species that called this Deathworld home. And perhaps, when they eventually took their places in the scientific community, they would remember this day when confronted with humanity's peculiar blend of recklessness and innovation. They would remember that, sometimes, the most dangerous adaptation of all is not a physical trait, but a mindset that views obstacles not as warnings, but as challenges. With that thought, Professor Rodak retired to his own chamber, already planning next semester's field trip. Perhaps the acid lakes of Vitruvian would make for an interesting comparison.